analysis show. This is a weekly Friday show that we are doing on the Financial Summit channel, covering a lot of the Bitcoin micro and macro TAs, specifically focusing though on the shorter term analysis. You guys already saw my show with Mike on Monday 4 or 5 days ago. We're doing it again in a couple of days, so make sure you are subscribed, smashing up those like buttons to stay engaged with this YouTube channel while we keep coming at you with amazing shows pretty much every day. Lots of very, very cool scheduled bits that you're going to be seeing. In this video, in this live stream, ladies and gents, we are going to be covering some Bitcoin analysis here because we've seen some continued very interesting price action here. We have seen Bitcoin break out again from our pennant right here. We've done it the first time here. We got that deviation. We've done it the second time here. We've got another deviation. But I am actually liking what I'm seeing here, and I want to break this down with you all in this live stream. So thank you all for tuning in to the premiere of the Bitcoin analysis show. Again, this is going to be a weekly show for those of you that are just tuning in. Definitely make sure that you are subscribed to this YouTube channel so that you don't miss out on this incredible time-sensitive content. But let's get straight into it. We've seen a phenomenal pennant here. We are displaying a little bit of indecision here by kind of consolidating around it, but that is okay with me at the moment. One of the big ideas we discussed on the Monday show was that we could be in a larger, more macro sideways pennant, and I will be discussing that with you all in this live stream today. But to start off, let's take a look at this sideways range here. Bitcoin did manage to get that breakout. The second time wasn't huge. We only managed to move up by about 2% above this pennant here, and we are now back down to this critical area of support in the $68,000 price area. I am okay with that. I actually don't really have a problem with the idea of Bitcoin being down at this $68,000 area of support because it is a back test of the previous all-time high. And if we do take a look at this chart to see how this market has interacted with this particular level, we have seen very clear reversals taking place over here. Not only have we seen clear reversals continuously across this range, but we've seen big reversals. Take a look at this one here from high down to the low within less than a day, taking the price down by 15%. When you manage to print big reversals at price levels, that tells you that these price levels are critical for the market. Additionally, if we move this even further along, we've got more consolidation at this price level. We've got support as well. So we're not just finding resistance here, we're also finding support. All of these things validate this area of support. We've continued to see that here and here. There's an endless amount of things for me to point out to you. So to me, this is a good sign. We are going to be having a problem if Bitcoin breaks this price level, in my opinion. If Bitcoin manages to break this price level, that's going to be the second deviation into this pattern, which is going to be a massive display of weakness. And it's probably going to take Bitcoin back down to the bottom of this pennant, but perhaps more importantly, down to the next key area of support on this chart, which is not as strong as the 68K area. You can see quite clearly that, number one, we haven't tested it as much as we have before. But number two, we haven't printed such strong reversals off this price level at about $65,000 as well, which to me is an important note, because these kind of things, like I said, not only validate our support levels, but also show us how strong they are. So if we do end up collapsing below this area, yes, I would expect support down here, but I would not expect that support to be the most powerful area of support that this chart could possibly print. I would expect this area of support, to be a little bit weaker, and I might have to expect that the price drops even lower, actually more realistically back down to the very bottom of the $60,000 range, and that would also fulfill the more macro picture here. But again, we are getting ahead of ourselves. Let's continue to stick on these shorter time frame bits of analysis. So right now, beautiful bounce area here. One of the key things I want to see with bounces is, do we print them quickly, right? I'll give you a great example. When Bitcoin fell down to this low at $59,000, which, by the way, was such a beautiful level for the price to bounce off at, one of the strongest signs that this is actually a legitimate bounce and it's going to stick in the market was that we didn't hang around there for long. If we take a look at this on the hourly, this is very, very clear. When we find support in strong areas, we don't fall down to our support level, trade sideways a little bit, eat an ice cream, go for a walk on the beach, and then move up. We just bounce up straight away. And that is a very important thing to be keeping in mind with these markets, right? When you kind of when you've got a resistance level like this, right, or support, but I can't really show you that example right now. But when you've got a resistance level like this and you instantly get shot back down, that's telling you there's strong resistance here. When you are not instantly getting shot back down, when you're actually consolidating in these levels, when you're not instantly getting that reversal, that is a key sign that this level is no longer particularly strong in the market. We have that crossroads right now in this market with this bounce right here. If we manage to print a bounce quickly, I'm going to be very happy with that. If we do something like this again, I'm not going to expect that the price will bounce up the second time. We've already done it once. This is not a good setup, in my opinion, if we start doing it again. I will expect that the market starts to tumble down purely based off the fact that we're not printing a strong reaction off this key price level here. So very, very important. If we do manage to bounce off this price level, then to me, that's just going to be a broader retest of this area, which was previously acting as resistance, now repeatedly acting as support. And I would expect the price to come back up to our next key area of resistance at the $71,000 range. I do not think that this is the strongest area of resistance on the chart for Bitcoin. I actually don't think that there's any strong areas of resistance left on this chart. So if Bitcoin does manage to come back up here, and especially because we have continuously been testing this area within just the last week or so, I will expect that this level will break. It's the same thing for these support areas. We're very much in a make or break, do or die type situation in this market right now, which to me is absolutely great because that means we could be looking at some really good volatility and some phenomenal trading setups. So I would be very interested in seeing how Bitcoin responds to this resistance level if we get there. But given the fact that we've repeatedly tested it so many times, and the only price history Bitcoin has ever printed at this price level is over here, just stretching back the last 32 days, I do not think that this level is going to hold Bitcoin back again. One of the key things that we actually see in price zones like this, very simply, is that the market comes up to an area of resistance and there are bitcoins that want to be sold, right? There are people that want to offload their bitcoins. There are people that are happy with their profits. I mean, basically nobody's in a loss on Bitcoin anymore, right? If you've just held Bitcoin. And those are people that are going to be interested in selling their bitcoins, right? As soon as that supply of Bitcoin dwindles down and there are no more bearish bitcoins in the market, there are no more bitcoins that want to be sold in the market, and then you return back up to these resistance levels, you're not going to have any more selling pressure. An absence of selling pressure with buying pressure still staying in the market typically means you're going to have a rocket ship. So that's obviously going to be super exciting. Very, very good stuff to be seeing in this market. There are also a couple of key indicators that I love to use, and I want to run through them with you all in this live stream here before we continue on. Let me take a chart with a little bit less clutter on it. This is a pretty good one. And let's start off with the daily time frame. I just want to start off with one of my favorite indicators here, the daily Ichimoku cloud, still showing us that we have a lot of room for a move down, to kind of trade sideways in a much more macro sense. And it would also allow the market to continue to cool off. And it would probably mean that the subsequent move up, if we print the move up, because nothing is guaranteed, it would probably mean that the subsequent move up will be massive. So that is something which I think is quite important. Zooming in a little bit further, we do still have that same support right here in this range. So that is very, very cool. We've already bounced off it beautifully once off that green Kumo, that green line right here, which is typically, with the Ichi cloud, you've got the bottom line and the top line. They're typically the strongest parts of the cloud. You can see how we bounce very nicely off the bottom and very nicely off the top. So that is something which is very, very cool. We haven't quite hit it yet. For me, what's much more interesting is our momentum indicators, specifically the EMA. So and the EMA ribbon here. We've still got really good support on the daily time frame here, and we are still making use of it. This, to me, continues to look like price action where we are coiling up, getting ready for something absolutely huge. In fact, something I've already been discussing with you all on my YouTube channel, which you can find linked in the description down below, along with my other links for you to check out if you like my content. One of the big ideas I've already been covering is that we've already printed this exact price action back in 2020. It's actually kind of creepy, just how similar the price action was back in 2020. We did it right here. And just to cast your memory back to this, if you maybe you weren't here or maybe you just don't remember, Bitcoin, of course, set the all-time high at $20,000 at the end of 2017. And what we were talking about on my channel, linked in the description, is that there is a phenomenal ascending triangle setup here that Bitcoin started to print, right? And we can see that kind of looking a little bit like this, where more or less we had some really, really nice hits along this level, strongly indicating that we were no longer, seeing bulls accepting. The Bulls no longer wanted to wait. Bulls no longer wanted to sit on the sidelines. They were accepting higher and higher prices. The ceiling stayed, broadly speaking, the same, and it printed a really, really nice setup. I've actually got a super cool chart that I want to show you all in this live stream, which will show you that very, very clearly. Let me just see if I can pull that up on stream. Actually, it's not going to show on this particular stream. But if we do run this chart side by side with what Bitcoin already did, this is going to blow your mind. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. And, I'm not a huge fan of fractals typically. I don't think it's the most, strong kind of tool that you could be using in the markets, especially because a lot of people use them as handicaps. But if you can be responsible with these, if you can kind of, use them for what they're good for, and then, make sure that you stay relatively objective, they are actually very, I think very, very useful typically. So take a look at this right here. We have got exactly the same setup, ladies and gents, on this chart that we had back in 2020, right? So very, very similar setup. They're both happening at all-time highs. They're both happening after massive rallies coming into them. Again, like I said, I've got to stress this. I am not the fractal guy, right? I am not the guy that's going to be screaming off the rooftops about fractals being the most important things in the market. And at the very same time, if history is rhyming very closely, I'm not just going to deny that, because fractals aren't my favorite tool in my toolkit. So I think this is well worth paying attention to. If we do end up falling down, this could be something to keep an eye on. Obviously, we've been testing our support level a lot more on this occasion here than we did last time. So in that sense, perhaps we are a little bit weaker. You're always going to find small differences between different fractal setups, but the main point still definitely stands, which is that this is a pattern that Bitcoin has enjoyed printing. We even did it on a slightly more micro setup here toward the very beginning of March, very end of February this year. So let's bring it back to the chart here and talk a little bit more about the current day price action. Super, super cool stuff. We are right now seeing a very small bounce off that area of support right here. It does line up with a lot of the key things that we're definitely looking at. One of the things that I'm also looking at here is the Bitcoin dominance chart. And this is a slightly intimidating chart with the way I've drawn things, but let me demystify this for you all on this live stream here today on the Financial Summit channel. We have had a very nice bottom out for the Bitcoin dominance chart right here, strongly indicating that we have now entered a new potential uptrend. I'm sorry, my chart is behaving really weirdly right now. Let me just stop using my keyboard shortcuts because that's what's messing this up. And we've seen a really nice kind of bottom out over here, a huge subsequent rally up over here. And since then, we've entered this kind of sideways block of trading. And within that sideways block of trading, we've been really spending a lot of time at the very top, like you could say the top 20th, top 10th 10 percentile of this block, which to me, I'm looking for body language of the market, right? If the market manages to enter a big sideways trading range like this, but then it sticks to the very top like this, exactly like we were speaking about a few minutes ago in this live stream, then to me, we've got a strong indication that Bitcoin's dominance could be rallying up in the same way we could be seeing breakouts either to the upside or to the downside. I think we're doing the same thing again right now. Not only have we entered a sideways trading range at a much higher level than previously back in 2021, 22, and even parts of 23, but we are now spending a lot of time in the very top of that box, which to me strongly implies another big move up for the Bitcoin dominance chart. And there's nothing else on this chart until we get up to that 60% Bitcoin dominance level. We're actually seeing a beautiful reflection of that with Ethereum, which to me is very exciting. I love trading Ethereum in order to make more Bitcoin. My number one objective, perhaps like many of you, is to accumulate more Bitcoin. If I believe Bitcoin is going to go up against the dollar, then of course I want more Bitcoins. And, one of the ways for me to do that is by shoving a bunch of cash into Ethereum and then letting Ethereum make me more money. To me, Ethereum is looking very, very interesting right now because and you're already getting ahead of me if you've been paying attention in this live stream. We got a nice quick bounce. There's no walk on the beach or ice cream over here. We are straight to business, getting a quick bounce off this particular area of support right here on at about 0.05 BTC per Ethereum token. the next time we come down to this price level, we are absolutely horrifically weak. We not only can we not, I mean, take a look at this, right? I mean, immediately after we hit this price level, we're up by 20% within less than 2 weeks, but up to the high within about 3 months, we're up by 74%. If we take a look at what happens 3 months later from here, we're up by about 17%. The numbers are speaking very loudly. In fact, the numbers are screaming that this chart is much weaker today than it was back here around the middle of 2022. And I think that's a very important sign, because if we're not able to hold on to this level, and we are already showing signs that we're back testing it unsuccessfully, right? We're actually looking at potentially dropping down. We could be seeing a big drop for Ethereum. What does that mean for Bitcoin's dominance, right? We come back to the Bitcoin dominance chart. Well, of course, if Ethereum is the second biggest crypto in the market, and if a lot of the other altcoins and shitcoins are going to follow Ethereum, then naturally, if we're looking at a big drop for Ethereum, that's going to play right in line with that Bitcoin dominance potential setup that we've got right here. I'm actually very interested in trading Ethereum. I think that this is the easiest money I could possibly make. It has typically been over the years the easiest money I've made as a trader. We're talking about relatively long-term positions where I'd shove my Bitcoin into Ethereum, make a 2x, make a 50%, whatever it might be, and then come back to Bitcoin. And, that way I've just made more Bitcoin. Super powerful, very, very important setup that I'm actually quite liking here. And this is something that I'm actually going to be making a dedicated video on. That's going to be posted to my channel as well, linked down below. I might actually do that video right now after this live stream, if not probably tomorrow. That is something which I'm actually really excited for, because to me, I'm always looking for those opportunities to move big portions of capital from A to B, and just, calmly make that money and then come right back. And that's been my approach. So definitely stay tuned for that on the Forflies channel if that's something that you think you might be interested in. One of the big things I think influencing Bitcoin right now, especially with this shorter term pullback that we've been seeing, is are the things going on in traditional finance. I can't make this live stream without covering it. We have seen a pullback on the S&P 500 today, and not only did we see a pullback, it actually gapped down. Take a look at this, right? We saw a very interesting open here. This was Thursday's trading session at 5,200 where we got the close. And today we saw a 5,160 open, right? So a fairly sizable gap here, definitely implying some downward pressure on the S&P 500 for the very end of this week. This whole week hasn't been amazing for the S&P 500. If we go ahead and take a look at this on the weekly time frame here, it has been a fairly large pullback for the S&P 500, and none of that should be coming to us as a surprise, because we haven't had a pullback on the S&P 500 for quite some time. The last significant pullback that we had on the S&P 500 back here was a 10% pullback. It lasted 90 days, and that pullback only began about 260 days ago. That's a very, very long time ago. I can't even calculate how many months that was off the top of my head. So, we're very much overdue, I would say, for some sort of correction on the S&P 500, and the dollar seems to agree with that. If we take a look at the dollar chart right here with the dollar index, not only have we seen a big move up for the dollar, but it's also moved up into its next macro area of resistance that I have drawn out on this chart. Let's take a look at this. This macro area at about 106 for the dollar has been another critical zone where we've seen big reversals printed for the dollar. These might not seem like a big deal, especially if we're used to the Bitcoin chart and so on. But for the dollar, for the world's largest, most important, most significant currency, this is a big deal. We've seen consolidation over here. We've seen major reversals taking place at or around this particular level for the dollar. And we have now skyrocketed up to this level within really just the space of like 3 or 4 days. I mean, a very short space of time here for the dollar to be moving up by such aggressive amounts, which, you know what, in and of itself, and this is actually something that I've been thinking of my own, the fact that the dollar has moved up this much, and we've only seen a small pullback on the S&P 500, we've only seen a small pullback on Bitcoin. These are, this is something that should be very bad for crypto. That should be very bad for the S&P 500. In my experience, I've seen very clear negative correlations. We're seeing the negative correlation in front of us. The dollar is up, so speculative investments and so on go down. It makes complete sense. But The magnitude is what's surprising me. We're seeing a massive move up for the dollar, and we're seeing a small reaction on Bitcoin. We're seeing a small reaction on the S&P 500. To me, that actually almost displays strength, right? We are moving down a little bit. We are showing that we're struggling a little bit, but honestly, not that much, especially compared to how hard we're actually getting hit with the dollar right now. To me, that's actually very exciting. Now that the dollar is at macro resistance, now that this is indeed, as I've been saying over the last few minutes, now that this is indeed an area where the dollar does tend to get some reversals, if we see the same kind of reversal happening again now, it's almost like, we've gone up by so much. Now we can only go down, and going down should be good for the markets. To me, that is a very exciting setup. If we start to see this dollar index start falling back down, even just to its next area of support down at 104, 105, that should be a very good sign for Bitcoin, for the S&P 500, and so on. One of my big theories that I've been putting forward, a very controversial one, but honestly one which is hard to deny if you look at the numbers, is that Bitcoin does trace the S&P 500 because it is classed as a tech asset by a lot of people, especially by the people that you want to buy Bitcoin, right? We talk about the ETF narrative and the big institutions, people in their big suits and ties buying Bitcoin. They don't understand Bitcoin like the grassroots people that might be on this YouTube channel or in the YouTube community and stuff like that. To them, Bitcoin is just another place to put some money to make a little bit of money, right? And with that lack of love that they're coming into the market with, they're just going to class Bitcoin as being another Tesla, another like irrational stock that happens to be a weird basement dweller currency, and they're going to be seeing it that way. And so naturally, if the big index is making money, if the big S&P 500 is looking nice, it's looking safe to invest in, then yeah, Bitcoin's going to look pretty exciting too. And we've been proven this with the COVID crash of 2020, when things really get bad, Bitcoin is not being used as a hedge. Maybe that's changing now. I'll leave that up to you guys to argue about in the live chat. I would be very interested to see what you all have to say about that. But from my perspective, from what I've been seeing here, I'm not expecting Bitcoin to outshine the S&P 500 in terms of, significantly for an extended period of time trading up when the S&P is down, for example. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I don't think that decoupling is coming anytime soon. There's actually even more weirdness because of gold, but I'm going to leave that for some of the other people on the Financial Summit channel to talk about here. And to wrap this particular live stream up, for me, one of the most exciting things is that we have been spending a lot of time in the upper kind of half of this range. Again, it's the same kind of thing I've been talking about. If a breakout is coming, we've got the best setup ever for it. We've also just heard from Bloomberg that the Bitcoin ETFs in Hong Kong are expected to be approved by Monday. And if we're looking at an ETF approval by Monday, that's obviously just in a few days. Of course, we'll be live on this channel again when that happens. So definitely make sure that you are staying tuned to this channel, engaging with it, subscribe to it, and so on. That kind of thing could bring a lot of upward buying pressure for the crypto market as well. And with all of these, kind of features lining up, that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be looking at a pump, but I really think that we have a phenomenal setup for it if it does happen. And in fact, I think the most important thing I can say is that if we do get that pump, perhaps right before or a few days after Monday, it's actually probably going to look very obvious in hindsight. I think it's going to look very obvious in hindsight with the consolidation that we've had up here now, with the ETF narrative now, with Asia, obviously Asian investors who don't have access to the US ETF markets, they couldn't access it, right? So that's a lot of money that was sidelined, which perhaps no longer will be sidelined. And I think that is actually in and of itself a very, very exciting prospect. I want to talk to you a little bit about what might happen if Bitcoin does move up. There are a lot of different schools of thoughts about this. I want to tell you what mine are, and I'm going to do it just based off, as close to factual information as I can, as I can be. The first thing I want to do is actually just, kind of measure the size of this ascending triangle. I typically find this to be a very useful tool for a fairly conservative target, especially in big markets like this. There are a few different ways that you can draw a potential flagpole here. I'm just going to draw it from about over here, up, and then extrapolate a target, which is going to put us at about this yellow line here at about $84,000 as a first potential target for Bitcoin. I did show you a little bit earlier on what Bitcoin did back in 2020, and this gets a lot more crazy. Honestly, I think completely unreasonable to discuss right now, but let's talk about it anyway because the numbers were astronomical. We did see off this breakout a huge breakout, something that I can't even fit on the screen, quite frankly. But if we do measure what this breakout was, from the breakout point to the first key high that Bitcoin set before a reversal happened, which only took 3 weeks to pull off, Bitcoin did move up by 114%. Now, I'm not saying that Bitcoin is going to do the same thing again. I think that would be quite rich of me to say. But if Bitcoin were to only move up by half of that, which is about 55%, we're still looking at $110,000 Bitcoin. And in case you're curious, if Bitcoin does the same move again of 114%, the numbers just become too ridiculous to talk about, in my opinion. It's 155K, but there's there's very few other ways to look at this the way I'm seeing it. If we do pull off similar moves, we are looking at a face melting rally. We are looking at, having to really be strapped in, getting those jetpacks ready, because it could start to get very, very crazy indeed. So definitely something which I'm excited by. Definitely something which I am looking forward to. I think that it all is going to be coming down to these local areas of support and how we print these bounces, if at all. If we don't, I think it's going to be a major setback for the market. I think we're going to be falling down to lower areas of support. If you like the ascending triangle theory that I was telling you guys about, then you might not actually be very worried about the price falling down here. You might actually think that that's the best thing the market could do. But if you're more of a kind of, if you're expecting more of a range, well, then losing this particular area of support, there's no recovering from this. If you have that perspective, you're going to be looking at the price falling a little bit lower. Personally, I'm on this side of things. I think if the price does fall down here, I'm not going to be able to see that silver lining and say that we bounce up. I do like the fractal, don't get me wrong, but like I said when I was talking about the fractal, it's not the most important tool for me. Still definitely something there, still definitely something I'd pay attention to, but I think just the way we've been seeing this market play out, if we do end up kind of collapsing below, I'm just not sure if we get that strength. I'd still be looking out for it. I think the real invalidation level would be falling below the mid 60s. If we fall below the mid 60s, then all bets are off, in my opinion. It is going to be at minimum a big sideways range, and if not, a significantly deeper pullback down into the 50s. Whatever happens, the number one thing I've learned as a crypto trader is that the market will not satisfy you. The market will move up when you don't want it to. The market will move down when you don't want it to. And it will sure as hell move sideways when you don't want it to. So as long as you can make peace with that, there are a lot of very, very cool trades to be made over here. A lot of very, very interesting ways to accumulate more Bitcoins while we hopefully continue to ride this thing higher. That's going to be it for me on this live stream. If you have enjoyed this live stream, you know exactly what to do. Hit up the likes on this live stream. Make sure you are subscribed to the Financial Summit channel. This is the premiere of the Bitcoin analysis show. You're going to be getting it, I think, just with me. There may be another show with me at some other point in the week later on. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But for now, this is the Friday show that we're going to be looking at for the weekly close. We've already covered a lot of that with the S&P 500 as well. I think it's going to be a very interesting week ahead. And I'm going to be right here with you guys on the weekly open on Monday again with Mike as well. So that is going to be super exciting. See you all in the next live stream. If you are interested in seeing a little bit more of me, if you want to get that Ethereum Bitcoin analysis video and my thoughts on my own YouTube channel, you can find all those links down below as well. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.